Hey, this is Sabrina, Monarch of monarchastrology.com and Magic of the Spheres podcast. I'm going live on Instagram and recording this here for YouTube about the current alignments of the Sun-Neptune trine and the Mars-Saturn opposition. These transits will both exact on July 20th, and I think there's something profound about the way that they're happening at the same time. So what I'm getting about this, I'm just going to actually set up these two transits so we have some context. The Mars-Saturn opposition is perhaps more dramatic. It is longer acting, and it's definitely one of the major transits of the year. So we have Mars in Virgo opposite Saturn in Pisces, and the Mars-Saturn combination is not easy. It is this combination of Mars, so we have like speed or urgency or action, with Saturn, which relates to gravity and heaviness and time and hard work or things being difficult or facing resistance and obstacles. So when we have a Mars-Saturn storyline, archetypally, it constellates things like frustration, right? Because Mars wants to move. Mars wants to be unobstructed and just be able to express its will. And Saturn is the obstacle. Yet there's also kind of like a military energy of Mars-Saturn, like highly organized, ritualized or ordered martial energy. People that have Mars-Saturn natally in aspect, who are athletes, tend toward high impact sports like boxing. There's that sense of, gravity behind the impact of Mars when we put Mars and Saturn together. So as a mood, as a frequency, Mars-Saturn has a kind of tectonic, heavy energy. So if we put it in the storyline of Mars in Virgo and Saturn in Pisces, Mars in Virgo brings in this kind of task-oriented Mars, like we're trying to get stuff done, we're getting organized, we are knocking things off a to-do list, like there's a certain urgency to maybe fix things, to make things better, to improve things, or certain flare-ups of crisis, whether that's emotional, mental, physical, and we're trying to, get on top of it, if you will. And then Saturn in Pisces is more of a field of like our spiritual maturation process. It's how we relate to fantasy and dream and how we are creating or co-creating our reality and the obstacles that we come up against, right? Because if you are in that process of learning how to create your reality or learning where you are responsible for creating things in your reality that maybe you think are just happening to you, it's actually like a very deep spiritual maturation initiation process to become aware of these subconscious threads that are manifesting into form, essentially. So I find the Mars in Virgo, Saturn and Pisces opposition to be quite spiritual and then also spiritually frustrating, like this sense of, if I just do all these things right, if I just do my practices, then my dreams will come true, right? Like this sense of needing to make the dream happen or to fix some deep spiritual problem fast, like that's kind of the mood of the Mars-Saturn opposition. This, for people that, I'm just going to actually speak to it at a spiritual level, because if you're tuning into astrology and you're not spiritual, I'm honestly a little confused. I'm just going to name that, because when people track the movement of the planets and they see meaning in it, but they don't believe in anything spiritual, it's just cognitive dissonance for me. So I'm going to speak to this transit from a spiritual perspective, because why not? So that is this underlying maybe frustration in the field right now of what's in my control, what's in my power, what can I will to further myself along the journey that I think I'm on, or the journey that I want to be on, right? Saturn in Pisces may also bring us in touch with certain kinds of disillusionment, in the sense of, am I shaping my life into a vision that I have, or is life shaping me and I'm surrendering to that? And what's the give and take there? Because I don't think it's also just about accepting everything that life gives us and going along with the flow and not having like a personal sense of desire or will. But the balance between the two is a moment right now where there's some inner spiritual conflict, likely, of like how much is in my control and what's not in my control. And as we're planning and kind of mentally trying to figure things out, I see that kind of Mercury ruled Mars and the Saturn and Pisces, going for it. Another general theme of the kind of like frustration or strife of the Mars-Saturn opposition is just the general dynamic of urgency with Mars versus time and the long game with Saturn. And when I thought about these transits, so to introduce Sun and Neptune, their trine, so we have Sun in Cancer, trine Neptune in Pisces. And I think it's actually quite significant that these two transits are happening on the exact same day, because it puts the Mars-Saturn opposition and the storyline inside of a Sun-Neptune field as well. So Sun in Cancer, Cancer relates to the womb and gestation, the moon, nurturing and safety, and feeling provided for, in a sense of like our animal body feels safe. We have the things we need, not even just at a survival level, but an emotional level. Do we feel held? Do we feel loved? Do we feel like we have close ones around? Do we know how to hold ourselves when we're having big emotions, right? And Neptune archetypally is also womb-like in a system comparing some planets to the processes of birth by Stanislav Grof. The Neptune part of the birth experience is being inside of the womb, right? Of being in this aquatic realm where, as an infant yet to be born, you have no concept of who you are, what you are, or time. And you're experiencing everything, you're taking everything in. And so things like your mother's emotions or what's happening in her life, and any of the hormones or stress chemicals or whatnot that she's experiencing, you are also experiencing when you're in the womb. And so Neptune and Cancer, and I think about the Sun in Cancer, Neptune and Pisces trine, it feels like a desire for paradise, like wanting to be in the womb of the universe and to just be held and loved by life, or the sheer terror of not knowing what's happening, or feeling like everything feels kind of off or distorted. So the womb experience, or being like held in the womb or the womb of the universe, is subjective, like whether that's going to feel like positive and magical, or if it feels kind of nightmarish, right? So like if you think about having a Neptune transit and being inside of the dream, or even just dreaming at night, it could be any type of emotion. But generally, I think the Sun-Neptune trine, there is a desire to like cloak oneself in dream, or to feel really held, right? And for that very sensitizing transit to be occurring, right? So Sun-Neptune trine, like there's a high degree of emotional receptivity and sensitivity in the air. For that to be happening at the same time as a Mars-Saturn opposition feels profound. I've been noticing it for myself in the sense of being like having processes that I want to happen quicker, and feeling like this underlying sense of extreme discomfort that I don't have answers now, that I don't know how to plan when I don't know the answers, and I'm itching out of my skin, right? Like it's excruciating. And I was talking about it with my friend Cameron, who was saying, like, focus on the process, like be present. It's a type of human suffering to want to be somewhere else than where you are. And so as I was dropping into that wisdom, like, okay, if I just drop into where I am, I realized that part of the Mars-Saturn scramble and frustration at the moment is this sense that we have to act, we have to do things, we have to participate with life. It's not just about not doing anything, but when we are efforting dramatically to avoid feeling the basic discomfort of the unknown or of some type of pain that we're avoiding, then, we're creating a lot of strife, and we're also raging against or like resisting time itself. And so if we bring it back to these two current transits and how they're acting together, the Mars-Saturn opposition is a basic frustration with things taking too long, or feeling like maybe the impact of events is more than we would like, or something like that. Like Mars-Saturn is a little bit heavy hitting, but there's a frustration with that transit. And then Neptune and Cancer are relatively like, Sun and Cancer, trine Neptune and Pisces. That's a very timeless energy. So in some sense, when I think about the current moment, not this current astrological moment, but the concept of the current moment, it is eternal, it's infinite. Like when you tap into presence, you enter a portal of infinity. And when I think about tapping into presence and it not being desirable, like it doesn't feel good to be present, there's a whole host of ways that then we try to split off and be somewhere else. And so you get the Sun-Neptune fantasy field, right? And so I think there's, with the current Sun-Neptune trine, something that we can look at in terms of our relationship with fantasy and with entering altered states or with entering trance. I'm someone who loves to enter altered states through meditation and trance and movement, and cultivate like bliss or different kinds of frequencies in my inner world, right? And I think there's a difference between bringing yourself into kind of ceremonial experience. Like I really think a lot about the magic of play, and even grief is a form of play. Like when we come up with or are guided through a ceremony. So whether, we're making it up or someone else's and we're going along for it, but when we start to just play with the elements or play with movement or play with being in an altered state, it's highly medicinal and magical, and things open up inside of that. And that to me seems like a really healthy experience of fantasy. But there's also ways that in the excruciating presence of whatever it is that's coming up for us, we want to soothe it away by doing something that kind of cocoons us into not exactly feeling it, like kind of numbing out, watching a bunch of Netflix, or participating in some kind of addictive behavior. And what I think the combination of these two transits happening at the same time is an invitation for is to actually be deeply sensitized, Sun Neptune, to some material that wants to come up and wants to be felt through whatever is like frustrating or painful feeling at the moment, and to open inside of it. So what I noticed about, my goals and all these things that I'm currently stressed out about because I don't have answers and I don't know the timeline and et cetera, that I am moving in a direction. I have my plans, if you will. And there's something that I'm being invited into about sinking deeper into the activations that are happening in a moment-to-moment way. And so if I'm spinning out mentally or locating myself in the future because I'm planning and plotting and scheming and strategizing and all this kind of Saturnian things, why am I doing that? Like, yes, I really desire this thing that I'm working toward, but what is the thing that's right here that makes it easier to stay in the future, to future trip like that, right? So it's not to say that I can't have those plans or that we can't think out into the future, but noticing if the energy, the emotional kind of aliveness is being offshooted into something like that, and what's the basic yearning, discomfort, thing that wants to be met, thing that wants to be felt here. So I think that's I think that's all that wanted to come through about this Sun-Neptune trine and then Mars-Saturn opposition. They both happen on July 20th. The Mars-Saturn opposition is longer acting, but just as a kind of current vibe or emotional check, having the Sun-Neptune trine happening at the same time is creating, I think, a greater level of sensitivity and emotional confrontation with the material that both of these transits bring up. Okay, I'm going to ask for any questions or just see if anyone has anything to say on the IG Live, but I'm going to end the YouTube here. If you're watching this on YouTube, please like this video, subscribe, leave a comment, let me know what resonated with you or how you're doing or how you're feeling these current transits. Thank you so much for watching.